Hello, church. If you've been in and around church for a while, you may remember some Sunday night meetings where the congregation would request their favorite hymns. Not quite hymnal karaoke, but close in concept. Now, this was a monthly occurrence and a favorite memory of mine when I was growing up. It worked like this: the congregation would call out that particular hymn page, and then we would sing it. Now, I must admit that it sometimes became a game of stump the music minister by calling out some obscure hymn no one had ever heard of. But that's a different story, and I'm going to go back to my point. One of my favorite hymns growing up was Trust and Obey. And I must admit, as a boy, it wasn't the lyrics I enjoyed, but the rousing chorus that was fun to belt out while our organist cranked up the Leslie and rocked. And I'm not talking about rock music, I'm talking about physically rocking back and forth. And it wasn't till I was older that I began to think about the deep truths found in the text of that hymn. Matter of fact, those truths rang so true to me that I set the new hymn, the hymn to a new melody. Here are the lyrics: trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. It's so simple and it's so basic, and maybe that's why we miss it. Trust God is really a simple act of transferring your confidence and your hope in yourself to Him. Let me say that again. Trusting God is the act of transferring your confidence and hope in yourself to Him. Trust happens when you focus on knowing more about who God is rather than what He will do and why. Imagine you're rock climbing and you find yourself dangling on what seems like the edge of a deep, dark cavern as you hang at the end of your safety rope. The voice calls from above, "I can help you, just let go of the rope." You look down, you hesitate, you can't see, you question, and of course, because you're trying to hold on just a little while longer, but you get tired and you've reached the end of, well, your rope. You have a decision to make. So despite the risk, you trust the voice and you let go of the rope, and much to your surprise, you drop just a few inches to the bottom of the cavern. Trusting God is like that. It's a risk, but it's a worthwhile risk because God is perfectly good and perfectly loving. He will never ask us to do something that is not the very best thing for us in the end. We read about that in one of his famous promises found in Romans 8:28. It begins, "All things work together for good." Now, according to his word, trust seems to set up like a chain reaction of God working in and through our lives, and it goes like this. Once we fully trust God, we will naturally begin to abide in Christ. Once we begin abiding in Christ, obedience becomes a natural outflow of our abiding in Him. That obedience then leads to spiritual fruit in our lives. You trust and then obey. Look how this unfolds in John 15:5. Jesus says, "I am the vine, and you are the branches, and he who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." So when we act on our trust by obeying, we become fruit bearers, not to bring glory to ourselves, but as Jesus says a couple of verses later, to glorify our Father in heaven. And as John Piper says, and I love to say, when God gets the glory, we get the joy. As I've looked back over my life, I can see how obedience has always proven to be worthwhile in the long run. I know this because I've never regretted an act of obedience. Now, I have resisted and I have been disobedient plenty of times and probably will again, but I've never regretted times I have obeyed, even when it didn't make sense or I stood to lose something. I have enough of a track record to know that I have never flourished or been fruitful in disobedience. Yet, it's amazing how often I'm tempted to ignore this reality. I guess I'm a slow learner, but I am working out my salvation with fear and trembling. Let's commit to abiding in Christ, learning to trust Him more deeply, abiding in His love, obeying His commands and prompts, and we will see the fruit of our lives grow and give glory to our Father in heaven. God bless you guys.